What is up, car addicts? So about a year ago, I made an updated video on the fastest cars for racing in each class after the bottom dollar bounties DLC, but some of the classes have newer, faster / competitive cars, so I figured I'd go ahead and make an updated video for you guys. So this video is for the fastest cars after the drip feed of the recent Money Fronts DLC update, and this includes every vehicle class and subclass as well. Now, these cars are mainly chosen based on Broughy 1322's track testing and some of my personal experiences in racing as well for other parts of the video. I'll leave a link to his channel down below if you haven't subscribed to him, and you really should sub to him. He is undoubtedly the king of car testing for GTA by far. Now, keep in mind that the cars chosen are factoring in a combination of handling, acceleration, and top speed for optimal overall track performance. So again, the cars chosen are not chosen based only off acceleration or only off top speed or only off drag races. It's a combination of multiple factors and the overall best cars for actual racetracks with turns. Also, for those of you who are on a budget in GTA Online, I will be adding in my budget car recommendations as well for players who can't afford the pricier cars at the top of some of the classes. And the last important thing I want to mention here is that the HSW cars will also be included in this list, but I'll also mention the cars without HSW as well. So for those of you who don't know what HSW is, it's basically high performance upgrades that make certain cars go a lot faster. Now, the HSW upgrade is currently only available on current gen consoles, which is PS5 and Xbox Series X/S, and of course PC enhanced version as well. However, to mention, HSW can still be turned off by the race host, so you kind of still need to have the best cars for every scenario, whether you're on old gen or current gen. So we're going to start with the slower classes first and then work our way to the faster ones. So let's go ahead and get started with the bicycles class. So the best one for racing in that class is any of the 3 race bikes, and yes, it is faster than the coil inductor bike for those of you wondering. Now, keep in mind that you actually don't even need to buy these as they aren't customizable, so you can just pick any of the 3 race bikes on the selection screen if you ever come across a bicycles race. Moving on to the utilities class, the best one is the Saddler pickup truck, and this hasn't changed since GTA 5 released, so you can steal and store this truck off the street for free or buy it for $35,000. This is probably one of the least race classes up there with the bicycles class, but definitely worth having in your garage. It's essentially free. Now, onto the Vans class, we have the Gang Burrito and the Rumpo Custom. Now, you only need to buy one of these. I personally recommend the Gang Burrito as it's a little cheaper and it's not as top heavy as the Rumpo Custom, which has a tendency to go onto wheels and tip over a lot. However, the Rumpo can actually wiggle boost on straights to increase its speed, so definitely something to consider as well depending on the track. Next up, onto the Go-Karts class, which is more of a subclass in the sports class. There's only 2 in this class, which are the Vito Modern and the Vito Classic. And the Vito Modern is significantly faster in the Classic, both in terms of overall track performance and top speed as well, so that's the one that you ultimately want to own. Continuing to the Hotring subclass, there are only 3 in that class, which are the Hotring Sabre, the Hotring Everon, and the Hotring Hellfire. Now, all 3 of these are closely competitive, so really you can use any of them. However, since most of the Hotring races are mainly focused on top speed, the Hotring Everon does have the highest top speed of the 3, so in general, it's one of the more popular choices for Hotring tracks. Moving on to the compacts class, we have the BF Club and the Brioso RA with the HSW upgrade on current gen. Now, these 2 are pretty closely matched, however, the BF Club is a lot easier to drive with better handling, just better consistency overall. Whereas the HSW Brioso's main strength is the straight line speed, which is really the only time I would recommend picking it over the Club is when you have tracks with longer straightaways where it can actually use that power. Now, as for the budget car for this class, it would be the regular Brioso RA at only $155,000, but keep in mind that it's still way off the pace of the BF Club. If you truly want to compete in that class, you're unfortunately going to have to spend the $1.3 million on the BF Club or the $1.2 million on the HSW Brioso. Now, onto the Coupes class. We have the Euros X32 with the HSW upgrade if you're on current gen. It's pretty much completely dominant in that class with pretty good handling and a very high top speed. Now, if HSW is turned off or you're on old gen, the best two cars to choose from would be the Fathom FR36 or the Previon. Now, as far as the budget car for this class, it would be the Ubermacht Zion, which is a car you can get off the street and store for free. Now, it is a ways off the pace of the FR36 and the Previon, but still decently competitive and a good pick for beginners since it's essentially free. Moving on to the muscle car class, we have the Vigero ZX/ZX convertible and the Buffalo EVX with the HSW upgrade. Now, the HSW Vigero is the king for most tracks. However, in more corner-intensive hairpin tracks, the Buffalo EVX is very competitive due to its acceleration. Now, if HSW is turned off or you're on old gen, you're going to want to use the Dominator GT. It absolutely dominates the class when HSW is off, even being relatively close to the HSW car's track performance-wise due to its sports car-like handling. Now, as far as the budget car for this class, it would be the Pizwazer Dominator in my opinion. This car is free for all players and it can still compete decently well with the top 10 non-HSW cars depending on the track. Now, onto the sedans class, we have four extremely competitive vehicles at the top of the class, which are the Chavos V6, the Schenkel Mila, the Reinhardt, and the Schafter V12. Now, the Schafter V12 isn't a sports class, but it is usable in sedan races. So these four are extremely close in terms of performance. The only one that lacks behind for most tracks is the Chavos V6. If you have a track that has longer straightaways due to its lower top speed compared to the other three. So overall, I think you're better off picking either the Schafter V12, Schenkel Mila, or Reinhardt. And now deciding which of those three to use just comes down to driving feel preference. I will say the Schafter V12 is the most difficult to drive of the three, but it is the cheapest at only $116,000, so that's my budget car pick for this class as well. Moving on to the SUVs class, we have the Vivinite with the HSW upgrade or the Astron Custom with the HSW upgrade. They're both extremely competitive on most tracks. However, the HSW Astron has a higher top speed with worse handling. And then the Vivinite is more for corner-intensive hairpin tracks where it can actually use its acceleration strength. So again, it's really track dependent as to which one to use. Now, if HSW is turned off or you're on old gen, the best one is the Castigator due to its handling and speed. And as for the budget vehicle for this class, it would actually be the Tauros at only $498,000, just an absolute steal for the performance this thing offers, and it can still decently compete with the Castigator depending on the track. Now, onto the Sports Classics class. We have the Turismo Classic with the HSW upgrade and the Sterling GT with the HSW upgrade. These two are insanely close on most tracks, so really just pick the one you like more. Personally, I prefer the Sterling GT as it's a bit more consistent compared to the Turismo Classic, which gets a little sketchy over bumpy tracks. Now, if HSW is turned off or you're on old gen, there are about 5 competitive vehicles you can choose from. The Uranus Low Speed, the LSCM Cheetah Classic, the regular Turismo Classic, the Cheetah Classic, and the Ardent. Again, deciding which one of these 5 to pick all comes down to driving feel preference. I personally like the Cheetah Classic out of those 5 as I feel it's the most consistent for most tracks. The LSCM Cheetah Classic is also a very good pick, but that one offers no visual customization. So yeah, Cheetah Classic, regular one, is my pick out of those 5. Now, as for the budget car for this class, it would be the Turismo Classic. So sports classics cars in general are not very cheap, and at about $700,000, the Turismo Classic is a very good deal for the performance this car offers. Moving on to the off-roads class, we have the Monstrosity with the HSW upgrade and the Firebolt ASP with the HSW upgrade. Now, I will say the Monstrosity is a lot easier to drive and more consistent than the Firebolt. However, the Firebolt does have a higher top speed, so it's really track dependent as to which one to use. Now, if HSW was turned off or you're on old gen, the Draugr or the BF400 will be your best choices. Now, keep in mind that the BF400 is in the motorcycles class, but it is usable in off-road races. Surprisingly, it only costs $95,000 and it's insanely quick, especially if you're constantly doing wheelies. Now, I will note that there are some custom races with deep water areas where the BF400 can't compete, so for those races, again, the best one will be the Draugr. And as for the budget vehicle for this class, I would suggest the BF400 for 95,000. It's a fantastic deal. Now onto the tuners class, which is more of a subclass rather than an actual class in itself, which is currently only comprised of cars from the tuners DLC and more recently the LSCM Jester RR and the LSCM Cheetah Classic, which are usable in those tuner races. So there are 7 highly competitive cars at the top of the subclass, so a very competitive class. We have the LSCM Jester RR, the Sultan RS Classic, the Vector, the Calico GTF, the Growler, the regular Jester RR, and even the LSCM Cheetah Classic. So which one to pick is highly track dependent and also of course driving feel preference as well. So the car with the highest top speed of all of these is the regular Jester RR with a top speed of 126 miles per hour. And for those of you wondering, yes, it does have a higher top speed than the LSCM Jester RR, which handles better but has again a worse top speed. So in most pursuit races, for example, which are more top speed focused, the regular Jester RR is one of the better ones to pick. But for most tracks, most overall situations, my personal 2 picks for overall performance with a good balance of handling and top speed are the LSCM Jester RR and the Calico GTF. Now, as for the budget car for this class, there honestly really isn't one, as all these cars cost well over $1 million. So again, just pick any of the 7 cars I mentioned. Moving on to the sports class, we have the Ubermacht Niobe with the HSW upgrade. This thing basically has top tier supercar performance in the sports class due to its insane acceleration, handling, and top speed. It just completely dominates that class. It's not even close. However, I will say on tracks tailored more towards top speed or stunt races with lots of stunt tubes where your car maxes out top speed wise, the Banshee GTS with the HSW upgrade can compete, as it has the highest top speed in the game of 172 miles per hour currently, but it just lacks in regards to handling in comparison to the Niobe. So again, overall the HSW Niobe is the best pick for most tracks. Now, if HSW is turned off or you're on old gen, there are 5 closely competitive cars at the top of the class, and those are the Italy GTO, the regular Niobe, the Paragon S, the regular Banshee GTS, or the Pariah. So deciding which one to pick is again all personal preference based on driving feel and of course the track situation. But overall, the regular Niobe is the easiest and the most consistent in the class of those 5. Now, as for the budget car for this class, it would be the Elegy RH8, which is actually free for players who have a social club account. The top 25 cars on the sports class all cost well over $1 million, so the Elegy RH8 being free is a good choice for beginners. This car is very fast around corner intensive tracks with its good acceleration and handling, and it can still wedge its way into top 20 on most tracks, not including HSW, which is very impressive for a free vehicle. Now, for the supercars class, we have the weaponized Ignis with the HSW upgrade, or the Cyclone 2 with the HSW upgrade. And deciding which one to pick is very track dependent, but for most tracks, the HSW weaponized Ignis is the one you're going to want to use. Now, I will mention that for tracks with longer straightaways or stunt races with lots of stunt tubes, you're going to want to use the HSW Devastate, as it does have a higher top speed. Now, if HSW was turned off or you're on old gen, you're going to want to use the Emerus, Krieger, or the Turismo Omaggio. Now, these 3 are extremely close competitive wise. Deciding which one to buy is all personal preference, but I will say that the Emerus and Krieger do have higher top speeds than the Omaggio for most tracks, so overall you're kind of down to the Krieger and Emerus, and the Krieger is a lot easier to drive as it's all-wheel drive. So the Emerus is a lot harder to drive, as the back end does tend to step out sometimes if you're not careful. Plus, there are some stunt races where the Devastate actually beats the Emerus and Krieger due to its higher top speed. But again, for most track situations, the Krieger is definitely the overall better choice if you're on old gen or HSW is turned off. Now, as for the budget car for this class, that will be the Dubachi Wagner in my opinion. If you want a chance at competing with the Emerus and Krieger for almost half the price, this is a top 10 performing car on most tracks in the class. Moving on to the motorcycles class, we have the Hakuchu Drag with the HSW upgrade. So this thing is an absolute beast and has a great top speed as well. Now, if HSW is turned off or you're on old gen, you're going to want to use the Power Surge. It's completely dominant in the class, especially if you wheelie. It gets insane bump boosts while you're wheeling, which is pretty wild. And as for the budget vehicle for this class, it's going to be the Batty 801 in my opinion. This bike only costs $15,000 and it has good handling and of course allows you to wheelie, which gets you to the higher top speeds to be able to keep up decently well depending on the track. And lastly, we have the open wheels class. Now currently we only have 4 open wheel cars on the class, and the Benefactor BR8 is currently the king. As for the budget car for this class, there really isn't one, as they all pretty much cost over $3 million each, so I would highly recommend waiting to buy one on sale or get it from the podium/prize ride. Anyways guys, hope you enjoyed. Now you know the best cars for racing for maybe some vehicle classes you weren't too sure about for 2025. And of course, I will update you guys with a new video as newer and faster cars are released later this year. Anyways, again, thanks for watching guys. Hope this was helpful and I'll see you in the next one.